Welcome everybody, and this is going to be my quick-fire analysis of the brand new Breath of the Wild information from GameInformer. Now, I'm going to start off with a few spoiler-free kind of just impressions and things they've heard from the developers and fun things like that. And then when we get into the really deep spoiler material where I don't really think they're super spoilery, they're really nice kind of tidbits and hints about what the game's going to be about, I'll put a big warning up so that no one who, doesn't want to hear any of it, you don't have to hear it. You can just avoid it. So, stay tuned for that, and let's jump into some of the fun facts and things we've learned from the Game Informer article. Okay, so when Game Informer talked to Nintendo and the developers, they said that the previous Zelda games were all made by making small areas and connecting them together. For example, in Twilight Princess, you're going from like a south part of Hyrule Field, and you go through a loading screen, and then you're in the north part, and so on and so on. But for what they did for this is, for the first time, they've connected all of those in one big open world. This is all stuff we've known for a really long time. However, groups within the developers, there's over 300 who worked on this game, by the way, all actually worked on specific locations, and those groups kind of split up so that, different parts of the world could be worked on separately, and then they all came together cohesively, which is a really, really cool way to do it. Another interesting thing we've learned is that Link can sleep in beds at these different outposts around the world, and this will regenerate his health. Because there aren't hearts around, the only other way to do that in the wild now is to actually cook something up and eat some food. That will either gain you extra hearts or refill your current hearts. It's a really interesting new mechanic. Another really cool thing is the dynamic weather system in the game, which we've seen a few times already, but the world actually reacts to this weather as well. For an example that the guys in the Game Informer gave is that NPCs, little characters outside of these different outposts, actually run inside when it starts raining, so they get shelter from the rain. Another couple of interesting facts comes from horses. Now, Link can keep multiple horses in this game at the stables. Affection and loyalty is actually really important to these horses, and they can grow in their stats when you feed and take care of them. You can call horses over to you, but horses need to be within a certain proximity to be called. And another really kind of devastating fact is that your horses can actually be killed by enemies. So you could really grow a big bond with this horse that you've named and you've groomed and fed, and it's got this whole really nice affection with you, and it's loyal and it follows you around. But then a guardian could come along, and then that's it. We also heard that the developers wanted the players to craft their own path in this game, so there won't be a companion character like in the past. We've had Navi, and we've had Fi in Skyward Sword, and these companions have been a thing of the 3D Zelda games for quite a long time now, but no more hey listen, I guess.
Hey, listen!
And the final thing I'm going to say before the spoiler section is that you can have different shields that will give you different speeds for when you're doing that shield surfing, snowboarding thing, which we've seen ever since E3, I think. It's a really cool mechanic, but different shields can give you different results. Some will be slower and some will be more swift and streamlined as you're banking and twisting and turning down the snowy peaks all across Hyrule. Right then, it is time. Spoilers, spoiler warning. I'm going to dive in to the discussion all about the shrines and the new dungeon. So the shrines, there isn't much to talk about, but there is a dungeon that the guys at Game Informer got to play. Nintendo gave them the controller at a dungeon, and we're gonna talk about it. Okay, so before we jump in to talking about the new dungeon, really, really quick discussion just about the shrines. We already know there are over 100 shrines. One of the guidebooks that got put on Amazon said about 120. It's pretty interesting. You can get an item in the game that identifies shrines, which maybe makes them raise out of the ground when you get near them, or maybe they rumble goes off and you can activate the item and it'll raise up out of the ground. That'll be cool. Once you discover a shrine, it can become a fast travel point, so you can fast travel back there at any point. So if you pass a shrine and you're like, I don't really want to do that yet, or I'm not geared up enough, I can't do that yet, I'm heading somewhere else, then you can just make sure you've got the fast travel point and come back to it later. Another interesting thing actually about fast travel is on the map, when you open the map, you can place markers down to remind you of things or tell you to go here later and things like that. You can actually place 100 of those markers. Now, I thought this was a crazy number. It's 100. You can place 100 markers down. It's really, really cool. We also got reconfirmation that every shrine gives you a spirit orb, which you've seen in the E3 demo. We got 4 of those, and then the old man on the plateau gave us the paraglider. Now, we don't know if that's going to be the same in the final game. You can assume it probably will be. But we don't know what the Spirit Orbs are going to do when we're down on, the main world of Hyrule from the Great Plateau. So, You know, we don't know what these spirit orbs are going to do, but that's pretty cool that we get on for every single shrine that we beat. Okay, here we go. We are diving in to the dungeon. This right here is a piece of concept art that GameInformer showed that just gives you a little tease at the architecture and the aesthetic for these dungeons. Now, GameInformer said that Nintendo took them straight to a dungeon, and they said that this dungeon is constantly moving. Now, we've seen a few constantly moving things that are really large in the game already. We've already also seen this parchment on the back of the map from the Master Edition or Collector's Edition of the game, and it shows these 4 mechs. So, is this going to be inside one of those? And interestingly enough, it seems like this dungeon is something to do with wind, but we'll get to that point fairly shortly. So this is a direct quote from GameInformer that says, Link must manipulate the entire enormous mechanism through his own ingenuity. Now, to me, enormous mechanism, again, sounds like these things we've seen in the trailer, these enormous mechs. So, Nintendo also reconfirmed that players can skip dungeons if they want to go straight to Calamity Ganon. I think one of the devs, the director, actually recently said that you can't actually go straight there. So you can't, from the moment you start the game, get straight there, because you're still going to need the paraglider to get off the Great Plateau. So there is a little bit of stuff you have to do to get there, but probably within the first 10, 15, 20 minutes of the game, you could get to Ganon, or at least off the Great Plateau, if you're, speedrunning it. So we've seen a hint of this next thing in a couple of the trailers. It's this kind of purple, black goo, and it kind of swarms around. We've seen it in a couple of the shots, and we now know it's called Malice, and you need to find and attack each pocket of Malice's eyeball. So there's like an eyeball in the middle of this goo, and you kill that, and I guess that destroys it and dissipates it away. The Sheikah Slate, which we've talked about before, is the map, but in dungeons, it becomes this like 3D model, and you can tilt the entire dungeon, which again could be 3D models of these mechs that we've seen walking around, these huge mechanical Sheikah beasts. So GameInformer actually never found a signature Zelda item in the dungeon when they were going through it. So maybe that means all of the iconic items we might get in this game are only going to be done outside of these dungeons, so they're not going to be mandatory. Maybe just finishing these triggers something, or makes your battle with the Calamity Ganon at the end of the game even easier. It weakens him some sort of way, or you get something cool. And they also said that they didn't see the familiar chest opening animation and the signature music. I think that's a little bit of a shame. This is where the real spoilers, I think, now kick in. So GameInformer got to play all the way to the end of this dungeon. So not only have we just seen all of that dungeon, but we also now know what the boss of this dungeon is. And I think this hints to a lot of really cool things. The name of this boss is Windblight Ganon. They describe it as a huge monster that has no face and a gun-like arm. And in this picture, as you can see, it looks a hell of a lot like that. I would agree that that's a giant monster with a gun-like arm. It's pretty crazy looking. You can see it's almost fused with Sheikah tech. It's like half Sheikah tech, half crazy, gooey Malice Ganon monster. But its name, Windblight Ganon, maybe means that, say if there is a wind dungeon, maybe there's an earth and a fire and to do with their location. So maybe the one we've seen going around Death Mountain could be like Fireblight Ganon or something like that, similar things. But this also means that at the end of each of these dungeons there is going to be a boss which is kind of a split part of Ganon. It's another form of Ganon that's fighting against you, which I think is a really cool thing, because this Calamity Ganon is like something we've never seen before. We've seen Ganondorf, this human form, in the past, and we've seen Ganon, this beast form, but Calamity Ganon seems like something else entirely. It's more like this entity that's not physical. He just kind of moves around and is smoke, but also it's a really fascinating design. And, we've seen a few glimpses of Calamity Ganon, but these new bosses at the end of the dungeons are pretty cool. They have a few features I want to talk about. So around the Windblight Ganon's, around the mask, I guess, let's call that a mask, there's kind of this mane, which reminds me a lot of Ganon's mane from previous games. And also, these long tendril-like arms are the same color and look to be made out of the same material as Calamity Ganon himself. It's this black, red, purple kind of look to it, which is really, really cool. They also gave a little bit of hint at the gameplay for Windblight Ganon. He says he can create tornadoes and will fire large spikes. Pretty crazy stuff. They also go on to talk about how they brought him down, which is they used ice arrows. They kept hiding behind cover and going in and slashing away at him, and they actually managed to beat him, which is pretty awesome, actually. Now, this is where kind of a theory/analysis kind of merges together here. So in this screenshot, we can see Link pretty much running up to Windblight Ganon and doing battle with him. However, the background is what I'm most interested in. Now, if we look at this background and compare it to a couple of shots of the bird that we've seen in previous trailers, I'm talking about the mechanical bird here, not the guy that's now a Rito. Don't get me started on Rito and Zora in the same game. Anyway, so this, I think, is the dungeon we are in. I think we are in this bird-like mechanical structure. This is the dungeon that we are fighting the Windblight Ganon in. Now, if you look behind him, there's these almost circular-like structures. You can see things that look a little bit like that. They also said in the GameInformer article that you're on top of this dungeon. And another thing, if you look behind the Windblight Ganon in this screenshot, you can see this orange Sheikah, it almost looks like a flower or a bud, which is actually from another trailer. But the one in this other trailer looks to be in another location, more of an interior. So it looks like we are activating something here, but also in this screenshot, you can see that this malice, this evil of Ganon, is still surrounding this Sheikah technology. So maybe after you defeat the boss, that resides and dissipates away, and you can go up to it, use your Sheikah Slate on it, and maybe take back control over this mechanical beast. And these will aid you in the fight against Climate Ganon at the end of the game. Anyway, that's just a little bit of my theory I thought I'd throw in there. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I've put a little bit of footage from other trailers and some of the other things in there. I've cut a couple of little clips from the GameInformer little trailer they dropped as well. They're going to be releasing new footage and interesting things all month. I don't think any of this is hugely spoilery yet. It doesn't seem to be yelling at us about the story. When we start hearing some crazy things about story in a kind of really detailed way, I'm being so vague about this, but when we do hear concrete things, I am probably just going to completely back out. But so far, I don't feel spoiled because there's so much I still don't know about the story, about the world, and what's going on. It's really, really cool that these bosses from these dungeons are other forms and other versions of Ganon. I love that as an idea. I can't wait to see the other designs that we might see from this. It's a little bit like Puppet Ganon and Phantom Ganon. They look like Ganon, but they're taking on different forms and different versions of him. And I really like that idea being something that is throughout all of these different dungeons. And I think one thing people might complain about is how similar all the shrines look to these dungeons, because I think all these dungeons are going to have a similar design to them as well, especially because I think they're inside these giant mechs. Also, that would only mean there are 4 dungeons, but some people are saying these dungeons are tied to the big pillar spike things sticking out around Hyrule Castle. We've seen maybe some evidence there are more than 4 of those. Maybe there are 5 or 6 of those, but I do think there are only 4 dungeons. Maybe they aren't related to those things, but, that's a different point entirely. I'll be playing Breath of the Wild and the Nintendo Switch this Saturday, so tune back in on Saturday for a little video where I'm going to be talking about my experiences with the game. I'm just going to be playing the first 20 minutes of the game on the Great Plateau on the Nintendo Switch. I'm pretty excited for that. And then I will be starting my own Let's Play of Breath of the Wild on March 3rd. There's going to be 2 episodes a day for a while, so check back for those. And also my Ocarina of Time 3-heart run is still going on right now. I'm in the Water Temple at the moment this video comes out. Actually, I think I just finished it today on today's episode. Spoilers. Thank you guys so much for watching. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this little analysis and talk about the GameInformer article. See you guys next time. Goodbye!